Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Russell Jackman. Hopefully, Vern Glenn will join us in the next segment, and we're going to have a special guest on. Let's see here. At each commercial break, we are going to ask a sports trivia question, and the theme today is Who Said It? All right?
You.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. I'll set it from the standpoint of asking the question. Yeah. And when we come back, we're going to introduce Owen Seitel, who's an attorney who's going to discuss sponsorship and endorsement deals, which is very interesting because especially with Steph Curry's latest deal with Under Armour and the NCAA changing changes that are going to benefit students earning money, it ought to be very, very interesting. Also, maybe touch on, if we have time, Cam Newton going to the Patriots. Holy smokes. And then something that I'm going to bring up here that's just kind of crazy, something about the NBA players are going to be allowed to wear whatever they want on their jerseys, you know, allowing social justice causes. And I'm thinking, what happens, though? First of all, it'd be a little distracting. And also, what happens if a player decides to put something on that might be controversial or offensive to other people? Like, someone wants to be pro-life or someone wants to be pro-choice. They're both social, justice type of things that someone may want to put on their back, and some people may be offended by that. So I want to get your guys' opinion on that. All right, this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, still providing mortgage investments that are currently yielding over 7.5% secured by real estate. It doesn't get any more conservative than that. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. By the way, their loan to value is still around 60%. Never lost money for any of their clients. So again, check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. Stay with us. You are listening to Sports Econ 101, and we are going to be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Edward Brown here along with my co-host, Russell Jackman. I don't know where Vern is, and hopefully he'll pop in later on. And I wanted to introduce attorney Owen Seitel, who is going to discuss sponsorship and endorsement deals. Owen, welcome to Sports Econ 101.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Okay, good. So first of all, let me first talk about the Steph Curry deal. He apparently made a huge deal with Under Armour. But the thing that I thought was very interesting is the fact that part of the deal is going to be an equity position in the company versus just strictly, I think with Michael Jordan, he just got a piece of every sale of shoes that, had Air Jordan on it. This seems to be I'm not sure if I can remember any other deal that was like this, that where the sports celebrity got an actual ownership equity in the company.
Yeah, I don't know of any other deal similar myself. It is unusual. I mean, I think some of that may be because Under Armour is not doing all that well right now. And so, maybe to incentivize Steph to stay with them, they had to offer a piece of the action.
Okay.
So that, that may have been behind it. As you said, the kind of the gold standard is the Michael Jordan deal with Nike. And that's kind of what we call a signature product deal, where everything that goes out with the Air Jordan brand logo on it, so on and so forth, Michael gets a cut of that.
Gotcha. And Vern just joined us. Vern, we introduced Owen Seitel, who's explaining about sponsorship and endorsement deals, and we were talking about the Steph Curry deal, where he actually gets a piece of the equity.
Right. Makes sense to me in the sense that he's singly their biggest name, and if he were to leave, if he left Under Armour, the company would probably go bankrupt anyway. So you might as well give him a piece of it.
Well, and if you remember, one of the reasons he went with Under Armour is because he and his dad were being interviewed by, and I don't remember if it was Nike or another company, but they called him Stefan, like Stefan Marbury, and it's like they even, I think, showed a different picture of him. They had no idea who Steph Curry was. And he goes, I don't think I'm going to go with them. I think I'll go with Under Armour.
Yeah, they blew that meeting. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Hey, Owen, I have a question for you.
Sure.
In the recent documentary on Michael Jordan and the Bulls, they devoted a lot of time to the Nike deal that he signed. Right. And However, I don't have the gentleman's name in front of me, but the guy that brokered the deal was
David
never
Falk.
mentioned in the whole thing. Isn't that kind of interesting?
It is, but that's the story of my life. So yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the way it goes. I mean, nobody really cares about David Falk, and he was the attorney that negotiated that deal, and it was a breakthrough deal at the time. And and David Falk will tell you that he came up with the Air Jordan moniker himself. I don't know if that was in the documentary or not. But yeah, I mean, Michael's Michael, and that's the guy who everybody wants to be their standard bearer.
Wow. Usually, it's funny. I was just thinking about that deal with Nike, where Jordan made more money than the entire country of Malaysia workers working for Nike. So I thought that was kind of interesting on that. And I guess usually the typical situation would be just strictly a percentage of sales, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of the signature products. Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Moving on to the NCAA changes benefiting students to actually earn money. We kind of touched on this a little bit before, and I think what was it, Ed O'Bannon, who kind of sort of sprung that? He was kind of the model person because of UCLA, and there was something to do with like video games using his likeness.
That's correct. So I believe it was EA Sports that put out an NCAA basketball video game. And of course, all video game makers want to make their video games as realistic as possible. So they created avatars of the UCLA basketball team. Ed O'Bannon, as you may recall, was kind of a unique player. He had a unique look about him. He was a lefty. He kind of had an interesting shot. So his avatar, if you looked at it and you followed UCLA hoops, you'd say, hey, that's Ed O'Bannon. So he brought a suit because in California, there's a law, Civil Code Section 3344, which is the right of publicity law, which essentially says that nobody can use your name, image, or likeness in marketing their products or services without your consent.
And did EA basically deny that it was his likeness?
Well, EA attempted that, but that didn't, really pass the smell test too well. And then they kind of backed off, and then there was, an effort to say, well, you had granted these rights to the university, and then we got the license from the university, and that's included within it. There's that probably, there's some validity to that argument. But the equities of what is going on here just kind of overcame it all. You've got guys like Ed O'Bannon, whose jersey is being sold in the bookstore at $25 a pop, and it's flying off the shelves, and he doesn't see a penny of that. It all goes to the school. So, there are many scenarios. Ed O'Bannon, the Ed O'Bannon case, he ultimately won in his action against the NCAA. And EA Sports got a nice award, huge attorney's fee awards, and so on and so forth. So it was a flat out win. But I think as a result of that, this all came to the fore, and really it really came to a head and concluded to some extent in September of 2019, when the California legislature passed the Fair Pay to Play Act. Which basically says if you're a student athlete at a California state institution, you can license your name, image, likeness, generate revenue therefrom, and that will not affect your eligibility as a student athlete.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know some people have the attitude, well, gee, they're getting scholarships, and so there's the quid pro quo, or that's how they're being compensated. But the thing is, someone, let's say, Ed O'Bannon was somewhat of a superstar when he played for UCLA, and the school made probably a lot of money for television rights and all that because of that. So I've got no problem with him off the side going ahead and being able to make money on the, off of his own likeness. I don't think he gives up all of his rights just because he gets a scholarship.
Sure, I would agree with that, and that is always the common argument against allowing student athletes to generate revenue off of their publicity rights. But and I could understand that argument much better in the 40s and 50s, you know, when this was not a huge business. But as it is now, I mean, you look at the revenue that's being generated by the Big Five conference schools and so on. You just can't. It's hard to justify any longer.
Yeah, that's a good.
Owen, if I could just jump in, and if you could just kind of share with me what you forecast for the future. If you're a blue chip 4-star, 5-star recruit, and let's say you're a junior in high school right now, by the time you hit college and you come in on name brand alone, you're going to sell some tickets. What is your projection revenue-wise for X particular athlete?
Okay, we're gonna actually, you know what? We're gonna let you answer that when we come back from break, because that's a great question.
Okay.
And also, I want to hear some fun stories without obviously revealing confidentiality. Yeah. Okay, here's our first trivia question, which is, who said it? When a sports writer pointed out to Babe Ruth that he was making more money than the current president of the United States, and Ruth responded, "I had a better year than he did." Who was that president that Babe Ruth was referring to? All right. Email Edward at sportsecon101.com. The answer to this question, we're asking the question of who said this, or excuse me, who said, actually, okay, who said it? We know Babe Ruth said it, but here's the question. When a sports writer pointed out to Babe Ruth that he was making more money than the current president of the United States, Ruth responded, "I had a better year than he did." Who was the president that he was speaking of? All right. Stay with us. You are listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial. We're going to come right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my co-hosts Vern Glenn and Russell Jackman, and our special guest, Owen Seitel. First trivia question. When a sports writer pointed out to Babe Ruth that he was making more money than the current president of the United States, Ruth responded, "I had a better year than he did." Who was that president?
Was it Woodrow Wilson?
No?
Herbert Hoover?
Herbert Hoover.
Herbert Hoover.
Yeah, he was president at the time.
That's because of the reason why I know is that my daughter was in Annie Jr. And Annie Jr. makes the play Annie, the musical Annie.
Oh.
They make fun of Herbert Hoover a whole.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, he during the Depression, he did not have a good years. Vern, why don't you go ahead? If you could repeat the question you had for our guest.
Oh, just Owen, if you could just kind of like project, if you're a high school junior right now and you're let's say a 4-star, 5-star athlete, huge fanfare coming into whatever program you're going to boost, whether it's basketball or football, you're going to sell some tickets, and you're going to generate revenue with this new law. Just kind of what your projection is for said athlete.
Right. Well, it's hard to kind of project out what actual dollar amounts will be. This is unknown territory completely. But let's just use an example. A relatively recent Bay Area example. There was a kid, Najee Davis, the running back from the East Bay, that went on to Alabama.
Najee Harris.
Najee Harris, sorry. Yeah, Najee Harris.
Najee Harris, yeah.
So he was in high school, and I think in Concord, somewhere in the East Bay. He was clearly a top 5 running back in the country. Now, if that kid's coming out under a rubric where he's allowed to generate revenues off of his name, image, likeness, does he go to Alabama? I don't know. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that, first of all, if you've got a kid like Najee Harris, or more recently like a Zion Williamson, everybody knew that this kid coming out of high school was going to be the real deal. He was going to be a dominant freshman and everything. Does that kid go to Duke? I don't know. I mean, because now you've got the overlay of the ability to generate revenues. Maybe it's more important for you to go to a school that's in a major media market. Maybe you go to UCLA. Maybe St. John's becomes a big program again, so on and so forth. That's kind of an unknown. And I think, if I had to guess, I think that, as a future Zion Williamson, somebody coming out like that, he could generate a couple $100,000 a year off of endorsement deals. Depending on where he goes to school. Again, if he's in Durham, North Carolina, you know, maybe you got the car dealer that's going to say, hey, kid, come pick out a car for the year. I'm not sure what else there's. Although, despite the geography issue there, Duke's on TV once a week, you know, playing hoops.
Right.
And that's going to factor in as well.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, there are going to be a handful of kids that are going to be able to generate significant revenue off of endorsement deals. And it could rise to the level where, hey, maybe a kid decides to stay in college an additional year because it's kind of comfortable. You know, the pressures, I can handle the pressure. I can get another year to fill out and grow up and mature and so on and so forth. So, you know, maybe you see more of that and kind of a reversal of this trend where kids are going, you know, immediately to the NBA. Maybe LaMelo Ball, instead of going off to Australia to play hoops, and I don't know what he made there, but I don't think it was a huge amount of money. Maybe he says, you know what, I'll go to UCLA and I'll make, you know, a couple $100,000 on endorsement deals, so on and so forth out of LA. So I think it could, I have no idea where this is going to go. But, you know, it's interesting because I think the old days, we all know in the old days, you know, somehow a booster would get some cash into a FedEx envelope and get it over the kid under the table and so on. Well, now you've got a legal means to funnel those funds to the kid.
That reminds me of a story, Owen, if I could just jump in. This is a story that O.J. Simpson used to tell. Simpson, of course, from San Francisco, went to Galileo High School. Well, he spent his first 2 collegiate years at City College of San Francisco, and he lived in Potrero Hill, and he would get a ride from Potrero Hill onto the campus in city.
Oh, hey, Vern, you're cutting it out a little bit.
And then after a while, get a ride to the trainer. The trainer thought, oh, geez, maybe OJ's mad at me. And so he goes, OJ, you're not hitching rides with me from Potrero Hill to school. What's going on? So OJ says, oh, well, let me show you something. So he walks him to the back of his class, and he goes, you see that Cadillac out there? He goes, yeah. Well, that's what I'm driving around now. And he goes, well, OJ, you don't have, you barely have any money to put 2 dimes to rub together. And he goes, oh, well, my Uncle Frank
wink.
Gave me that.
Right.
Good old. We should all have an Uncle Frank.
Right.
Yeah. No, I had a similar experience. I went to undergrad at University of Florida, and I was there at a time when they were a bit more ethically challenged than they are now. And, you know, it was pretty common that you would see a recruit come in and you know that this kid comes from nothing. And the next thing you see him driving around campus in a really nice new car.
Oh, I remember even in high school, there was one kid who he wasn't that tall, but he was just really, really good, a big standout. And one day we saw him driving around in a brand new sports car, and this is high school.
Yeah,
and he ended up going to Chico. You know, I don't know, who gave him the car, but it had to do something to do with basketball.
Right.
And it's funny because the story I heard was he played like in 1 or 2 games, and this guy was not an aggressive guy, but somehow he got into a fight and he got knocked out, and that was the end of his career. I mean, he got knocked out on the court. Some guy took umbrage to how he reacted to a foul or something. Tell you what, we have a couple of quick minutes. Owen, do you have any kind of fun stories for us without disclosing any confidential information?
Well, that's hard. I mean, you know, when we're doing these sponsorship deals, of course, the negotiating points are money and the terms of the deal and so on and so forth. But really, the big issue is the morals clause, which is, you know, the company doesn't want their athlete or celebrity to get into any kind of trouble that in turn besmirches the company. And it's always been, you know, the case through most of my career that was kind of a one-way deal. That company says to athlete, you know, you violate the morals clause, you commit a criminal act, you do anything that's untoward and causes bad publicity, we can cut you loose. And I had always argued for years that should be a two-way deal. That should be mutual. I mean, if the company does something that's that is in ill repute, that the athlete should be able to.
But how often is that the case though, where a company does something, you know, where they've done something toward? It doesn't happen that often, does it?
Yeah, it happens. I mean, I would argue, and I'm not, you know, I don't, I hope I'm not going to offend any of your advertisers here, but I would argue that, you know, if I had an athlete that had an endorsement deal, for example, with Wells Fargo, and they were in the process of, you know, opening all the accounts unbeknownst to people and so on and so forth.
Sure.
I think that besmirches the athlete that, you know, is on the endorsement deal with them. So I would argue that. So anyway, my point is that, you know, that things have changed in that regard. I used to get my athletes terminated all the time, athletes and celebrities terminated from their deals all the time, because you'd have these very broad morals clause. And now we've got a scenario where, you know, we're more able to get that mutuality provision in. And I've terminated contracts based on wrongdoing of companies. So
yeah, I mean, if you give a company too much latitude, you know, somebody gets popped for one DUI, and you know, obviously I'm not condoning this stuff, but or you know, possession of marijuana or something. It could be something small. It could be jaywalking. You know, who knows if it's that broad. If they cut loose the athlete, is there still some benefit though that the company gets, like, you know, all the revenue streams from that name, right? You know,
sure,
I mean,
I'm sure that there's kind of a tail effect to, you know, to the endorsement that was in place. But, you know, I mean, look at if Enron did endorsement deals with athletes, you know, at the time that was going down.
Yeah.
I think an athlete, you know, should be able to get out of that deal and disassociate from that company.
And if they couldn't, they'd probably just do a big social media saying, hey, whoa, I am not part of this, such and such, and then get themselves cut off or whatever.
Right. Yeah, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, there's always ways for an athlete, I would think, to get out of the deal that way. You know, if you besmirch the company without, you know, slander, then, you know, I'm sure there's ways to do that. All right, guys, we're going to cut to another commercial break. When we come back, I do want to ask you guys about the NBA allowing players to put social justice themes on the back of their jersey, which reminds me, wasn't it Steve Garvey who says it's not the back of the jersey that matters, it's the name on the front, right?
Right.
Over a team. Okay, second trivia question is, which cocky outfielder once claimed, if I played there, meaning New York, they'd name a candy bar after me? All right, one athlete famously said that. Which, by the way, he ended up playing for them. And if I remember, they actually did come out with a candy bar, I think. Okay. I don't know everything, but sometimes I think I know these things. Edward, email Edward at SportsEcon101, the answer to this question. Which cocky outfielder, of course, that's a subjective term, right? Is he cocky? Yeah, you can decide whether or not. He once claimed, if I played there, meaning New York, they'd name a candy bar after me. All right, stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn, Russell Jackman, and our special guest, Owen Seitel. Second trivia question. Which cocky outfielder once claimed, if I played there, meaning New York, they'd name a candy bar after me? Russell.
Reggie Jackson.
Reggie Jackson, yeah. In fact, that's probably why he played there, is because he knew ahead of time they were going to name a candy bar after him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everyone always confused my last name with Jackson, so they thought I was a distant relative.
Oh,
I can see that. Yeah.
Russell Jackman, Reggie Jackson. Okay,
Yes.
I get it.
There you go.
All right, guys. So I got this is sort of a little controversial, but I wanted to get your guys' feelings on this. So apparently, NBA players are going to be allowed to have, quote, whatever they want on the back of their jerseys if they wanted to promote some kind of social justice or something. And, you know, some people are saying, well, it's good. Some people are saying, well, you know, it's going to be very distracting, right? You're watching these players and you're going, well, what's on the back of his jersey? But the main question I have here is, what if a player wants to have something on his back that's a little bit more controversial? So let's say, you know, forgetting the Black Lives Matter situation, but let's say it's someone who's very pro-life, for example, right? That's a social situation. And he wants to say, you know, I'm pro-life. Or somebody who wants to put on the back of their jersey, I'm pro-choice. I mean, is there going to be like anything allowed? You know, you're going to offend one person or another, aren't you? And does that matter? What are your guys' take on that?
I think once you open it up and allow people to, make a statement, I'm not sure who is going to be the determiner of whether a statement is appropriate or not. So that's a slippery slope.
It is.
Well, according to Chris Paul, who is the president of the Players Association, he has been talking to the NBA about this, and the base of it is the social justice message that the players want to convey. I mean, there's nothing talked about with respect to pro-choice and all that kind of stuff. With this is all obviously related to the Black Lives Matter movement, and so I think how it's going to be worked out in the end is going to be guidelines where there are restrictions on what is deemed appropriate and inappropriate.
Have you guys seen like the lime green uniforms? Have you guys seen like the peach colored uniforms that they've had and the things that say Los Bulls on them and all that stuff? That if that isn't distracting enough as it is, and sort of shit proves that NBA uniforms are just sort of this malleable sort of form that has no meaning anymore in the NBA anyway. I mean,
well, they're just taking a page from the NFL. Have you seen the Thursday night games and what they wear?
Yeah, those are. I actually like those. I gotta say that the bright colors and stuff. I thought those are actually pretty cool. I know.
Well, because when Seattle plays the Rams and Seattle comes out with that lime green like neon.
Or what about the
like,
Utah uniforms? The ones that are look like a parfait exploded. So if you're gonna do that, you might as well at least have a socially important message behind it, because those.
Going back to what Vern said about like the lime green, though. I mean, I got no problem with that, because you're one team versus another. You got to figure out where your receivers are. If everyone's in a white uniform with a white helmet, I mean, that's going to be really tough, right?
What bothers me more is when the players wear the yellow gloves and they have the yellow on the base of their shoe.
Well, except.
And you think there's a flag on every play.
Oh, so what they want to do, they just throw a shoe out there.
Yeah, or they just flash a glove around and think there's some kind of penalty going on. So if that can be done, look, a message on the back of their jerseys isn't going to be nearly as distracting.
I think part of it's going to be like what does it say on the back of specifically? It may not be the message per se, like good or bad. It's going to be like, well, I can't quite read that. What does that say? And that happens a lot of times just in general. When someone has a name it's hard to pronounce, you're trying to, if you don't know the player that well, what's his name? What's the back of that jersey? Moving on here, Cam Newton to the Patriots. Vern, what do you think about that?
How about that?
Yeah,
I think it's a pretty good.
I like it.
It's a pretty good move by the Patriots.
Yeah.
And it's up to Cam. Let's assume Cam is healthy, okay? That because health is really kind of what held him back as of late. So let's just say he comes in, earns the starting job, which he probably will, and I guess how the Patriots play, how it will change the offense for Cam Newton. And if you're Cam Newton, you're a little bit longer in the tooth NFL-wise. So if it's 3rd and 1 and you're at the goal line, is Cam going to do the Superman leap over into the end zone, or is he just simply going to hand it off? So I guess it's going to be between him, Belichick, and Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator, as their style of play. But that offense will change to fit Cam Newton's game style.
And I like it. I mean, I still like Cam Newton. I think he's still got a lot of steam left. How old is he now?
32.
Got to be early 30s. Yeah.
Okay.
32.
I mean,
I'm not as big a fan of Cam Newton. I think that he's really slowed down.
Why is that?
I think he's shown some real poor decision making in the last couple of years. The talent level has diminished significantly in New England, so it's not the same team that was steamrolling teams. You've seen the Bills starting to evolve into a better team. The competition is better in the AFC East. And I think also the shortened season and the shortened practice time is going to work against their ability to shift their whole system from the Tom Brady style of performance to a Cam Newton performance that they're not sure how he's going to play. Is he going to adapt more to being a pocket quarterback? If he can't adapt to being a pocket quarterback, the Patriots do not have an offense that's set around a scrambling quarterback. That's just not ever been how Belichick runs his team.
I just think it's got all the earmarks of a potential disaster. You know, the New England fans are really tough. They've been used to winning all the time. You know, and I saw the other day, I was reading something, you know, through all of these these cheating scandals over the last couple of years, they've lost something like 4 or 5 draft picks.
They're about to lose another one.
Yeah, they're about to lose another
this one's a 3rd rounder and I think $1 million fine for this latest infraction.
So, you know, that starts to eat into the talent that you surround a guy like that with. And I don't see it working out too well.
I'm with Owen on that.
All right,
Yeah.
but you got half the screen
I will say
saying good and half the screen saying not
for
good.
the Buffalo Bills, if they take a shot right now in the AFC East.
I think you were saying the Bills have their best shot at winning the AFC East. You're getting cut off a little
Yeah,
bit.
Sorry about
between
that.
a bad cell area there. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe this will. Well, I was gonna say we've got a shortened season, but you know, the Bills losing 4 Super Bowls in a row. Maybe this is their shot. You know,
I bet there's some people out there watching that weren't even born when the Bills were losing 4 Super Bowls.
yeah. And
Well, I wasn't watching one of them, but that was because I got so sick of watching them lose. I've only missed 2 Super Bowls, and one of them was the second Dallas Bills Bowl.
It's like the first one was their best shot too.
Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
That's right. Yeah, but it's that last second field goal, 1991, right?
Yeah, the
Sky Norwood missed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and here's the funny thing is that, you know, Houston should have been in that Super Bowl, but they just lost it. It was their defensive backs who just dropped the ball, and Frank Reich came in and just threw touchdown after touchdown to get.
I remember that watching that game at halftime, and they were saying, "Okay, you know, this game's over."
Yeah, 45-3 or something like that.
That gives me just the incentive to watch the second half.
Yeah.
If everyone here is saying this game is over, I think I want to check it out just to see what happens. And of course,
yeah. How many? I mean, that's happened. In fact, fairly recently in the last couple of years, there's been, well, even the Super Bowl with Atlanta and
New England.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of a little bit ridiculous. We have just a few minutes. Vern, why don't you give us a little update? What you're working on? You said spring training.
Yeah, we on the TV side here in San Francisco, we're kind of putting together our plans on covering the spring training for both the A's and the Giants 2.0. The Giants and the A's, they report midweek, and then the Giants have their first full squad practice on July 3rd. The A's have their first full squad practice on July 4th. But there are so many restrictions as far as covering these guys. They don't want us being the electronic media, anywhere near these guys at all. You can't sit them down. You can't interview them one-on-one. You can only get but so close as far as shooting batting practice and infield. I mean, they want you so far away. If you do live shots, it has to be outside of the stadium. I mean, they don't want you part of it at all. You can't go in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
The press box has been kind of augmented so that nobody's close to anybody, and you can't have any more than 2 representatives of a TV station at one time in that ballpark.
I'm going to guess that's going to hamper your job just a little bit.
Well, it's just going to limit it limits our access. That's for sure, and we are going to be more reliant on the teams giving us content, because the teams now are entrusted with giving us pregame, postgame, maybe some B-roll of practices and stuff like that. So stuff that we would normally and cover ourselves. We now are dependent on the team to give us what we need. And I believe that's going to create some issues there, especially when something controversial happens.
I heard that they don't even want a pitcher and catcher in the games anymore. It's just going to be fungo.
T-ball.
T-ball, yeah.
coach pitch.
All right, we have 1 minute before we have to cut to our last commercial break. Owen, you want to say any last minute words before we cut to our break?
Not really. I'm excited to finally meet Mr. Involvement.
Yeah, that's right.
For me.
I think his wife had something to do with that, kind of backing off on that, right? Is that right, Vern?
What's that?
You had to back off from Mr. Involvement because of your wife saying, "Yeah, I think you need to back off."
No, it's old age. She couldn't. It's age and it's health. I've been in this market for 30 years, and I don't bounce back as quickly as I used to.
Well, no, you're still reeling from that tackle from the 49ers. Who was that?
That was Jeff Ulbrich. That's the hardest I've ever been hit in my life, in a blitz pickup drill.
Yeah.
He just flat out just pancaked me. Yeah.
Man, the guy.
So just and that was just one hit. Imagine 65 plays a game where you get hit like that.
Well, yeah, but you're not 6'6", 300 pounds either. So there's a little bit of a difference on that. What's that?
No, but but let's just say running backs, anywhere from 5'9" to 5'11". In that, I mean, there's a lot of them, but man, good Lord, I mean, it's
I still have a headache.
Like head-on collisions every play.
All right, guys, here's our third trivia question. Pete Rose hit a lot of singles in his career, 3,215 to be exact. This number didn't blow everyone away, however. One less impressed player, known for hitting the long ball, said, "If I had played my career hitting singles like Pete, I'd wear a dress." Which outfielder said this? All right, stay with us. You are listening to Sports Econ 101, and we're going to be right back with some closing comments. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn, Russell Jackman, and our special guest, Owen Seitel. Third trivia question. Pete Rose had hit a lot of singles in his career, 3,215 to be exact. This number didn't blow everyone away, though. One less impressed player, known for hitting the long ball, said, "If I had played my career hitting singles like Pete, I'd wear a dress."
Oh.
Which outfielder said this?
I'm going to go with Barry Bonds.
Barry Bonds, no. You have to go back a little bit further than Barry Bonds.
Back further than Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
Wow. Oof. Is he in the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Oh.
Helps.
And he played a little bit in the same era, but a little bit before. He was a little bit more of a veteran by the time Pete came up.
Ted Williams?
No, a little bit after Ted.
At a Hall of Fame. Wow.
So who else hit
Carl
the
Yastrzemski?
No, that would have been a good one. I could see Yastrzemski saying that. No, Mickey Mantle.
Okay,
Mickey
all right.
Mantle said that, yeah. He was a big enough boy that I guess he could say that around about Pete, because otherwise Pete would have found him and clocked him one.
Yeah.
All right, Owen Seitel, thanks again for joining us on Sports Econ 101, and here is our thoughts for the day. Question: how many vegans does it take to change a light bulb? 2. 1 to change a light bulb, and 1 to tell you they're vegans.
Yeah, 1 to tell you.
I like that one.
Yes.
And last night, my wife told me she feels like I treat our relationship like some kind of a silly game. Unfortunately, that cost her 12 points and a bonus turn. All right. And that's it, guys. Thanks again for joining us, Sports Econ 101. Owen, it was a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me.
The information.
Yeah, thanks, Owen.
Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. We'll
Fun, guys.
definitely have to have you on again sometime.
Would love to.
With that, I'm going to say tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Good night, America.
Adios, America.
So long.